Good afternoon to all our participants. Welcome teachers and teacher educators who are joining us from all the provinces in Argentina and across the world. Welcome to our ELT Week 2026, a new edition of our series of webinars offered by the British Council in Argentina towards the professional development of English language teachers. This year, we are very proud to have the support of Brit Cham, so a big thank you for promoting our event. My name is Mariela Masuyama. I'm Head of English and School Education Programs at the British Council in Argentina, and I'm delighted to be your host for the day. This event is being broadcast by the British Council Argentina YouTube channel. And for this very special opening session, we are delighted to also be joined by teachers and teacher educators on our Teaching English Facebook and YouTube communities. So a big welcome to you all, and let us know in the chat where you're joining us from. Before we begin, some housekeeping. Let me remind you that safeguarding is a big priority for the British Council, so you are encouraged to leave comments, questions, and suggestions in the chat, making sure you maintain a respectful and positive communication, and remembering not to share any personal or sensitive information in your comments. If you participate in the sessions throughout the entire week, you will receive a certificate of attendance. At the end of the week, after Friday sessions, we will post a link to our survey for you to answer and register your participation. In this case, please make sure that your name and details are correctly spelled. Otherwise, you might not get your certificate. And for those of you joining us on the Teaching English Facebook and YouTube channels, we will leave a link to this opening session towards the end of Pilar's talk. So, without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Pilar Capaul. Pilar is a teacher and ELT content creator who works with the British Council, among others. She's the creator of @teachersofenglish_ on Instagram, an account where she shares her daily teaching experience and useful ideas. And today she will be talking to us about how starting a new school year, like we are just about to do in Argentina, can be a bit overwhelming, especially when resources are limited or technology isn't always reliable. So this session will offer a collection of practical, low prep strategies to help teachers kick off the new school year with confidence and creativity. She will explore adaptable activities that work across levels and ways to repurpose everyday materials for engaging lessons. So help me give a warm welcome to Pilar Capaul.
Hi guys, how are you doing? Thank you very much for joining today's session, and thank you, Mario, for that lovely introduction. So today we're going to be sharing some very, very practical ideas. I know that we're all getting ready for a new school year. So yeah, lots of teachers from everywhere. So today I'm going to be sharing some low prep ideas, zero prep ideas, so that we always have lots of resources and activities to work with our students. So let's see. Can you see my screen? There we go. All right. So first of all, I'm going to ask you some questions. All right. I want to get to know you a bit better. So have you ever had to adapt things last minute because of some tech issue? I'd like to know that. And also, have you ever decided not to work on something because you didn't have the resources to do so? You know, maybe you saw a teacher doing something on the internet and you thought, you know what, I want to do that too. And then realized, you know what, I don't have the resources to do that. So I had to change everything. I won't be able to do that. Has that ever happened to you? Yeah, so some teachers are saying yes, yes. All right, yeah, all right. So let me tell you something. You're not alone. That's the good part. So today we're going to be sharing some practical ideas, all right? to make sure that we always have a plan B, we always have something that we can do with our students. And super important, I want to know how you guys would use these ideas with your students, because I'm going to be sharing some things that I did with my students and worked. But the moment that you do them with your students, you're probably going to have to make some changes. You're probably going to adapt these ideas. And the moment you start changing, tweaking some things, you end up with a brand new idea. So if you like them, if you would adapt them to use them with your students, do share how you would use them with your students in the chat so that by the end of the session, we end up with even more ideas. All right? So let's see. The very first activity that I want to share with you is this one. What do I expect? And this is a very nice one that we can try the very first day back at school, or every time we start a new unit or a new topic, for example. So let me show you how it goes. The idea is for students to think about what they expect from a new unit, right? So this is Unit 3, traveling. What do I expect? What am I going to learn about? What structures am I going to learn? What vocabulary items? What information are we going to discuss in class, right? Am I going to share things with my classmates? Am I going to learn about my classmates? What do I expect from myself, right? Am I going to work very hard? Am I going to participate in class? Am I going to help my classmates? What am I going to do, right? Or for my teacher, what do I want my teacher to do? Do I want my teacher to explain everything to me so that I can take down notes? Do I want my teacher to allow me to discover things myself? And also, does my teacher know that? Should I tell my teacher how I like to work? What do I expect from the materials that we're using, right? Do I expect really clear explanations? Do I expect examples? Do I want to study on my own at home, right? So what type of resources am I going to need for that? And what do I expect from AI? We know that our students use it all the time. So how am I going to use it, right? And what am I expecting? Am I expecting ChatGPT to do my homework for me? Am I expecting it to be a tutor? Am I expecting it to help me learn new things and practice the things that I work on in class, right? So here we have some examples. So we have a new unit, travel and holidays, right? So students are going to think about these questions, right? And they can answer them, or maybe we can draw a chart together. And these are the things that I ended up talking about with my students. So I expect to learn useful travel vocabulary, right? That's cool. And I also want to speak more fluently about past trips. Lovely. I mean, that's a lovely idea. But now I'm going to ask them some questions. For example, you want to learn new vocabulary. That's fantastic. Can you memorize everything in just one day? Are you going to wait for me to tell you that we have an exam to memorize everything really quickly? Or are you going to go over your notes before our lessons? Right? That's a different thing. Or you want to speak more fluently. Got it. I'm going to give you useful phrases and nice vocabulary items that you can use when you want to express your ideas. Now, are you going to keep quiet in class, or are you going to try and use those words and expressions? Right? Let's start thinking about how we're going to work this year. Or for me, right, I will try to speak English even if I make mistakes. That is lovely. But that's what we say today. We haven't even started, right? Now, in 25 days or in 3 months, are you going to allow the fear of making mistakes in front of other people to stop you? Or are you going to share your ideas anyway, right? What are you going to do during the year? Let's think about that. Also, I will study vocabulary after each class. Sounds lovely. I mean, it sounds beautiful. It's a lovely goal. My question is, how will you do that? Because this is the thing. We're starting today, and I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to study a lot. I'm going to be a great student this year. This is my year. Sounds amazing. But how will you do that? Let's start thinking about how we are actually going to do that. For example, are you going to go over your notes before our lessons? Are you going to share the new words that we see in class with ChatGPT so that it can come up with some activities for you to practice over the weekend? Right? What shall we do? Let's go from expectations to actions, right? So that we can start planning our year together. How about this one? I expect clear explanations and examples from my teacher. That's amazing. And I want correction, but not all the time, right? So this is when we think, okay, does my teacher know this, right? Does my teacher know that I want her to correct me? But first, let me speak, right? Because I might get lost if you correct me when I'm halfway through, right? Does my teacher know this? Because if I don't tell her, how will she know? Also, I expect clear explanations and examples, and as teachers, we love doing that. But maybe we share 3 examples and students need 4. But if they don't tell us, how are we going to know, right? So it's a very nice activity for students to know that they are also part of the process and they also have to share when they have questions, when they have doubts, when they need more examples, when they want us to explain something in a different way, right? When they want us to correct them. And how and when, right? What about the materials that we're using? I expect real life dialogues. Sounds amazing. Now, what are we going to do if there aren't any? What if we are given a very old course book and we don't like it, right? Maybe as a student, I can maybe share some scenes from this TV show I'm watching at the moment. Or maybe we can use movies or videos or TikToks or Instagram reels. So it's a very nice activity for students to start thinking about all the things they can do if things don't go to plan during the year, right? And also remind them that they are part of the process. Also, I hope the listening activities aren't too fast. That's okay. I mean, we all expect that, but what are we going to do if they are too fast? Well, let's start thinking of different strategies. Maybe our teacher can teach us some new words before we listen. Maybe we can chunk the recording so that it's not too long. Maybe we can use a transcript if there is one. Right? Let's start thinking about all the things that we can do during the year. Let's plan the year together. Also, AI. Our students use it. We have to include it when we plan. So what do I expect from ChatGPT? I want extra practice with speaking questions. I want to have a conversation with ChatGPT. Lovely. When are you going to do this? Right? Because saying that you will do this is one thing, but planning it is a very different thing. For example, a student might say, I'm going to use ChatGPT to have a conversation in English after football practice, so I get back home, I'll have a shower, and while I wait for dinner to be ready, I'm going to have a conversation with ChatGPT, right? So I know that on Tuesday evenings, that's what I'm going to do. So I don't just want to do it, I know how I'm going to do it. I know when, I have a strategy, right? Or for example, I would help rewriting my sentences more naturally. I am a good student, I can share my ideas, I am a good writer, but I would like to write differently. I feel like I don't sound very natural. All right, can ChatGPT help me? Right? And this is the thing. Are you going to use ChatGPT to get your homework done for you? Or are you going to share something with it and say, tell me how I can sound more natural? Give me other expressions. Explain to me how I can do this, right? So let's start thinking about the prompts we're going to share with ChatGPT, the ones that we're going to use, the ones that are going to help us to improve, right? All right, so this can be a very, very nice activity for us to plan the year together in English, obviously, and it can be a nice activity or it can be a very nice first lesson. And the cool thing is if that students like it and if they find it useful, we can use it every time we start talking about a new topic, we start working on a new unit, we start a new theme, right? Up to us. All right, so this is how we go from expectations to intentions to actions, and we're going to end up with very active students. Right. Cool. I can see some more people saying hi from different places. Welcome, guys. We're sharing some practical ideas. So, activity number 2. This one is something I want to share with you. All right. So, let me show you. The idea here is to review things by sharing them with others. And when I say review things, I mean lots of things. We can summarize. We can go over our notes and the things that we did. We can present things. We can plan some presentations together. We can create products, I don't know, presentations, ideas, infographics, up to us. We can record videos or maybe audios. We can write summaries, stories, write poems, and we can draw. We can do whatever we want. It is up to us and our students, right? We can get creative. When I say things, I mean lots of things: structures, content, vocabulary items, the stories that we read together, theory that we covered at some point last year, this year, right up to us. Things that students find interesting. Maybe someone shared something they came across on social media. Let's talk about that. Let's learn some new words to talk about that. And maybe we can wait some weeks and then revisit the topic, right? And review it together with this activity. And when I say others, I mean people who are not us, teachers, because yes, we're always there for our students. We're always there to listen to them, to correct them, to read what they write. But sometimes adding someone else to the equation can make things more interesting for our students. So we can include parents or other relatives, maybe siblings, grandparents, people on the internet. We're going to have to be careful if we're working with students who are at school, right? So we're going to be very careful with that. Neighbors, friends, companies, NGOs, right? There's a lot of people that we can involve in the process. So this is a quick example, right? Just to show you how simple this can be. It doesn't have to be very complex. Students can write a short letter, right? And say, you know what, Granny, something I want to share with you is a project we worked on in English class where we created short podcasts about our favorite hobbies. As simple as that. This made me think of you because you love listening to podcasts and learning new things. I think you would find it interesting. So that student can share that podcast or that project or that text or that summary or that drawing. So what I want to share with you is that this can be a very complex activity with lots of steps, or it can be a very simple one where students do something. Yeah, NGOs, absolutely. You can get in touch with them and tell them that you want to do something with these students, right? And it can be very interesting for students to say, hey, I am communicating in English with someone who's not my teacher. I mean, that's really motivating for them. So here's an example. I was working with a group of students last year, and we were working on Unit 8 of the course book that we had at the time. And that course book, that unit was all about art. And I thought, okay, nice, cool. But this is the thing, students were really into the topic. They absolutely loved it. We read texts about certain artists, and they knew other artists, and they had a lot to say. So I thought, okay, we have to do something with this. So what I did was create a text using artificial intelligence about art and AI, using vocabulary that we had seen during the year. And some of them were phrases that were in the course book, right? For example, I don't know, knock someone sideways, right? And then also some phrases that came up during the year. You know, we were having a conversation and maybe students went, there was an expression to say that, there was a phrase, right, to express this idea, but I don't remember it. So we have a list, right, on the board, and we keep a record of everything. So I thought I'm going to use all of this vocabulary, right? I want to see if students remember the meaning of these words and phrases. So I created the text, right, we're using artificial intelligence, and all the things that are involved, all the words and expressions, those are words that came up at some point during the year. So I wanted students to read the text, right? I wanted to see if they remembered the meaning of all these words. And they had to share and they had to write an open letter sharing their thoughts on the topic, right? And they could write whatever they wanted because this was basically them sharing their thoughts, right? And they were allowed to share this with whoever they wanted. So, for example, I had a student, her name was Ines, is Ines, and she wrote an open letter and she addressed big tech companies, right? And I thought, okay, send it to them. And she thought, no, you know what? I have a blog online. So she shared it online, and some people started replying to her and saying that they agreed with her and that they were interested in the topic. So it was very interesting for her to see that people do read the things you post online. And they replied in English, which was really cool because she had to reply in English. So it was a really interesting activity because, yes, of course, I read it. I'm the teacher. But she was also thinking about all the other people that were going to read her letter. And here's an example of what can happen if you cannot find an NGO or a company or anyone to read it. One of my students wrote an open letter, but we didn't have anyone to share it with. So we thought, you know what, I'm going to share the file with other teachers here. And maybe they can read your letter with their students, and their students can reply to you and send another letter. So even if you cannot think of someone to include or to share things with, there's always someone. There's always another option, right? Maybe it's another teacher, maybe it's another group. So there's always someone to do this with, right? And it's really motivating for students to see that other people, like other than the teacher, is going to read what they write. So it adds a little something, right? Especially when we have been working together for a long time, maybe some months, and it's like, another essay for my teacher. Well, let's do something different, right? Let's do something that someone else is going to read, right? All right. Cool. I'm glad you liked it. I see some more people saying, hi, how are you doing? All right. So next idea, class Instagrams. I absolutely love this one, and I think you'll love it as well. So this is the thing. We read The 12th Night by William Shakespeare at Newland School. And my students at the time were 13 years old. So it was actually really challenging because they were very, very young. Their English level was amazing, but the language in the play was a bit complex. So I was like, how are we going to go about it? So this is what we did. We used social media because that is something they use and they love it. So basically, we read together in class. We analyzed the context of production. We were like, but what did this mean at the time? Why is this important? What's going on? Where are we going with this? Is this character good or bad? What makes you say that? So we worked on that together. And then as homework, I said, you know what? You are going to work in teams. You have to pick a character and you have to set up an Instagram account, and you're going to be that character all throughout the year. And this is how we're going to go about it. Now, this is the thing. If you want to do this, it's super important that you are very organized. You cannot just say, post on Instagram. No, that's not going to work. So this is how we went about it. I created some files with different charts, and students had to share their Instagram account, right? So that I could follow them. I also had a special Instagram account. I was the captain, right? And they had to pick a character. And for example, I would say, okay, guys, so today we finished reading Act 1. Good. I would like you to come up with 3 posts to tell me a little bit about your character, right? The one that you picked, what's going on in the play, and also tell me a little bit about the setting, right? When and where is the story taking place? So students had to complete these charts. So it says, content, right? Hello, Instagram. I know you have been waiting for your handsome Orsino to arrive to, it says social media, it looks very small. I can't wait for us to interact, right? So they shared the content they were going to share on social media, and then they had to share the visuals as well, because we're talking about underage children that were going to be sharing things on the internet. So they had to share that with me before, obviously. And then they had to share the reasons why they wanted to share that. So these girls said, we wanted to have an introduction for our Instagram. We believe that Orsino is a self-centered person for the way he speaks in the play. That's why we decided to make the first post quite arrogant. And I was like, okay, good. So they have an opinion. They understand what's going on. Nice. Then for the second post, they wrote this. If music be the food of love, play on. I have been listening to new music lately. The 21st century has some great songs. Which are your favorite artists? So they started sharing quotes from the story as well. And I thought that was fantastic. And the cool thing is that they started making connections. And once they understood how this project worked, I could say, okay, so we finished reading Act 2, Scene 1. Cool. I would like you to share some stories telling people what's going on, telling your followers what's going on. So they would share some stories, leave them in highlights, obviously, because I needed to check them out later. They were able to share a lot of information through the captions or descriptions of their posts. They shared quotes as well. And then they also started making connections between the play we were reading and the content they consume like every single day. For example, One Direction, a band some of my students absolutely loved, had a song titled Olivia. And one of the characters' name is Olivia. So we thought, hey, that's amazing. And they shared that song and also wrote a little bit about the connection between that character and what the song is about. So I thought, that is absolutely amazing. So they got really creative and they really enjoyed it. It was a very, very, very nice activity. And it's one that I wanted to share because if you want to do something that's different, but also something that's simple and doesn't require a lot of preparation, this activity is really good. All right, next one. So space retrieval. I read a lot about this one, and I really wanted to do something with my students that wasn't necessarily testing them, like doing exams, but I needed something like an excuse to go back every now and then and go over the words and expressions and phrases and idioms and structures and all the things that we worked on. So we started doing this. Whenever we had 5 or 10 extra minutes, I asked them to write them some questions using the vocabulary from that lesson. Of course, we would go over them together to make sure that everything was all right? And then I kept that handy. And sometimes at the beginning of a lesson, or when we had some extra minutes, or when we needed a brain break, for example, I would ask them some of these questions just to see if they remembered the meaning of these words or how to use those structures. And it didn't take me any time. I didn't create the questions myself. They did it. And it was a lovely activity all throughout the year. Here. This is a picture of what the jar looks like if you teach face-to-face. If you teach online, I have a file, a separate file where I keep all those questions. So you can do it. Doesn't matter whether you teach face-to-face or online. It's a very nice activity. And once you have those questions handy, you can do whatever you want. It can be an exit ticket. It can be a way to check understanding. It can be a way to get insights, before planning a new lesson. Are we going to move on and start working on new vocabulary items, or should we go back and maybe review the things we worked on? We can use it as a warm-up activity. We can use it to revise and go over everything we worked on before a test. We can use it as a brain break. We can use it as a game, right? We can compete. Students can divide themselves into teams and they can play together and we can give them points. So there are lots of things that we can do. And again, it doesn't take any time to prepare if you're the teacher. And the cool thing is that students are part of the process. They're the ones coming up with the questions. They are the ones answering the questions. So it's a very, very nice way to go over all the things that we see during a year, right? Right. Let's see. Yeah, I see some more people saying hi. Cool. I'm glad you like them. Fantastic. All right, so I have one more idea to share with you guys, and this one is my very favorite one. I really, really, really wanted to share this one with you. So it's the teacher's notebook, and this is the thing. Hear this. Oh, are the answers respectful? What, to this? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about the vocabulary items that you work on with your students, and then they use them to come up with questions, and then they share something. I don't know. A new word can be customs. How do you feel when you go through customs? Well, I get a bit nervous because I never know if I'll have to leave something there, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're all respectful. All right, so my favorite activity, hear this. So I use social media a lot, and I'm always interacting and chatting with teachers. And sometimes I get questions like, how can I do this? How can I go over this topic with my students? How can I work on whatever, right? And I always tell them, well, I'm not an expert, but this is something I've tried, or this is something that has worked for us, or this is something that I'm planning to do. And then I tell them, what do you do? What have you tried? How do you go about it? And many teachers share how they go about it. And they end up sharing the most creative, amazing, out of the box, original ideas. And I'm like, are you kidding? You just said you were not creative and you didn't know how to do this. And you have this lovely idea. Come on. I mean, it sounds wonderful. Now I am going to do what you said. So this is the activity. We're going to keep a notebook handy. And I know you have one. You don't need to get a new one. I know that all of you have one at home that you have never used because it's cute and perfect and you don't want to ruin it. So grab that one, the one that you have there sitting at home, and you're going to keep it handy all throughout the year. All right? Every time the day is over, it doesn't have to be after every single lesson, but once the day is over, right? I know you probably want to go and have lunch or have a coffee. Maybe you want to go and have dinner, but take 2 minutes. It takes 2 minutes, I promise. Write down the things that work and write down the things that don't work. And that's all you have to do. Maybe you did something, you go to class and you do something and you realize that all your students love that. And you're like, okay, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to do this again. I don't know what happened, but let's repeat that. You try a new game. You saw a teacher, playing a game with their students on Instagram and you thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. You tweak it a little bit because, you know your students, and it works. Write it down. You join a session like this one. You see an activity that you like, write it down, right? And also write down the things that don't work. We played a game. Students didn't like it. I planned this lovely speaking activity. They didn't speak. That's okay. Write it down. Write everything down. But the cool thing is that the moment we write things down, we define them. Because, sometimes we leave the classroom and we go home and we think, okay, that was not very good. I wonder what went wrong. I wonder how I could make that better. But we also don't really know what happened. So the moment we write it down, we're like, oh, it was the instructions, or it was the example. It wasn't that clear. Oh, maybe I should have shared a model. It's really easy to find solutions to things the moment we describe them or give them a name or identify them. So write things down, everything, the things that work, the things that don't work, everything. And the cool thing is that the moment we keep a record of all these things, right, we're going to end up with a very long list. And someday we're going to go back and say, okay, what did I write last month, or what happened last year? And we might end up saying, hey, that was a lovely idea. I want to do that again. Oh my God, that project, I forgot about it. We have to do that one more time. So I think that teachers are the most creative people ever. And I often interact with teachers who say, no, I'm not very creative. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go about it. And yes, you do. Yes, you do. And I'm convinced that the moment you take 2 minutes to write things down, the good and the bad, that's when you go, oh, you know what? That was a very good game. And I came up with it. Or that was a very nice strategy to do this thing, to do this project, to overcome this situation, right? And this is the thing. Hold on. There we go. Also, pay attention to the things you do when you solve problems. For example, you wanted to play Kahoot. You spent the whole weekend creating that Kahoot, but there was a power cut at school and you couldn't play. How did you manage to work that day? What did you do? Did you have a plan B? Did you come up with something on the spot? Write it down. So in the future, you'll have a stash of ideas to keep handy to use, right? Whenever something happens, or when you're planning and you cannot come up with questions, check that list of all the things you did and worked. Right. So that is the end of my session. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. Let me know. Yeah, you did? Cool. Let me know if you're planning to use those ideas. Yeah, absolutely. We want it to be practical and simple. Absolutely. Yeah, that is the idea. Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Cool.
thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pilar, so very much for so many inspiring ideas and practical outlook on how to be creative in the classroom. Sometimes as teachers, put a lot of pressure on ourselves and think that being creative means coming up with these very big projects or very ambitious things. And sometimes it's as simple as just reflecting on your lesson at the end of the day or talking to your students about their expectations. So I think the chat agrees that these are all very insightful ideas. And of course, we have some questions. If you haven't left your questions in the chat, please do. So we're going to take a few minutes now towards the end of this session to tackle those. Is that okay, Pilar?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So one of the comments that we got in the chat has to do with adapting lessons. And one of our participants says, how could you adapt these wonderful activities to be done with perhaps primary school, elementary, starter students? Because some of the examples that you showed show perhaps high-level students, if we think of reading Shakespeare, or at more advanced levels in the case of the writing tasks that you showed. Do you think these ideas could work perhaps in primary, perhaps with elementary level students?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, I'm thinking about the Instagram accounts. Maybe I would do it with elementary students, but not primary school students, just to make sure they're safe, right? But elementary students can share just short phrases telling their audiences what's going on in the story that you're reading. It doesn't have to be Shakespeare. It can be a short story. It can be a text from a course book. It can be a poem. And they can share summaries of different poems you read all throughout the year. So definitely. Or the one where we write questions and we put them in a jar and we use them every now and then to go over the things that we work with our students. Maybe students can share the questions with us and we can write them down, right? Or they can write them and then we can rewrite them on the board, and maybe we can go over them together to see if things are okay. Do we need to change something? Is this clear enough? So for sure, there's always a way to adapt all these activities. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's important what you mentioned about, for example, using class Instagrams. And you did mention that the content was supervised by yourself and that these are
Absolutely.
accounts specially created for the group to work with during the lessons and not
Yeah.
perhaps personal accounts. But it is important to know that, for example, Instagram has 13 plus user
Yeah.
minimum age. So this is not something we can use in primary.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day, there used to be this sort of classroom apps where you could simulate a Facebook post or an Instagram
Yeah.
post, but it would look like it was a post, but not on an actual platform. So perhaps
Yeah.
that would be an adaptation if the
Definitely.
younger ones are interested. But whatever
Yeah.
it is, even if it's writing these comments on a poster on the wall for the school
Yeah.
to would work. Absolutely. We have tons of questions also coming in from our Facebook. One of the questions comes from Javier Maturana in the chat, and he's asking about preschool students. And
Mm.
this is tricky because he says, of course, they don't know how to write. If
Yeah.
you think about maybe a 4 or 5 year old. So, how do you teach them new vocabulary? And do you do this in a non traditional way? Pilar, have you ever taught preschool?
I was going to tell you, I don't. I work in secondary school. So, yeah, maybe we would need to come up with new activities. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And whenever we're working with younger learners, perhaps vocabulary is something that we work on a lot, but
Yeah,
maybe more through games, through chants, through a lot of
exactly.
repetition,
Using
sometimes at
pictures.
word level or a short phrase level,
Yeah,
using flashcards, using drawings, and it's perhaps a different sub skill set. Um,
absolutely. Yeah. So,
and yes.
sorry. No, as we said, the moment we start thinking about our learners, we can say, this activity is lovely. How am I going to use this with my students? You start making some changes here and there, and you end up with a completely different activity. And that's the one you should write down in your teacher's notebook to keep handy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Many people commented in the chat about your idea of using this notebook, and they
Mhm.
commented on the idea of journaling as a
Yeah.
tool for reflective practice. Is this something that you keep to consistently, or is it something that you have handy and whenever the light bulb goes on, you just jot things down?
I do it very, very often. What I don't do is journal because that takes a lot of time, and I cannot just expect myself to journal because I know that I will have something else to do, and I'll be tired. So I need something that's very, very practical and takes no time. So what I do is I have that notebook handy with me all the time, and I just write a short phrase like this game that worked, giving instructions this way, doing this, doing that, because I know that that's what I can do. Maybe if someone enjoys journaling, that could be a lovely activity, but I just know myself and I need to be very practical. So I just focus on what worked and didn't work, and that's it. I like lists.
Okay. On this note, Lucia in the chat mentioned that she would also apply another column with ideas that don't belong in either of those categories. So it's
Oh,
not just work,
yeah.
didn't work, but maybe have a third category for the more random thoughts and feelings. And she says so that you can go on working over those ideas that still
Yeah.
need some improvement. So it's not maybe black and
Absolutely.
white.
Yeah, that's a lovely idea. Because sometimes we see things, we read things, and we're like, I would love to do something with this, but I don't know what. So we can just jot it down and then revisit the idea later to see what happens. Yeah, that's a lovely idea.
Absolutely. And Javier also mentions in the chat this idea that revisiting, perhaps your planning helps a lot. And every year is a new opportunity because students and contexts are different.
Yeah.
And we teachers ourselves change from one year to the next, hopefully.
Yeah.
So is there any special way in which you prepare to start a new academic year?
So I always have lots of ideas handy. I mean, all of these they're always there. And I always ask maybe teachers who already know their students what to expect, what they like, what they don't like. And again, I walk into a classroom with maybe 10 activities. I might end up using two, but just in case, I'm like, if they want to speak, if they don't want to speak, if they like reading, if they like watching videos, if many of them are absent, if it ends up being a massive group. So just in case, I have plan B, C, D, especially for that first week.
Great. And going back to our previous question on teaching preschool, we have lots of handy comments in the chat on how to teach vocabulary to preschool children. Maria Laura mentioning with Realia, with pictures, with chants. Eugenia mentions through games, songs, short poems. Flashcards are mentioned as well. Dancing, why not? Or as Lisa mentions, TPR, total physical response activities work very nicely with young children. Daniela mentions acting. So lots of ideas to work with the younger students in our YouTube comments. So this is something else that we can look at. Pao Masari mentions, what about students who can't speak English? Because a lot of the ideas that we talked about had to do with using the students as a resource. Speaking activities, in writing activities, for them to have perhaps more autonomy. In your jar, they write the questions, they answer the questions. Yeah. So when we are teaching beginners or perhaps students who don't have the level to carry this sense of autonomy in your lessons. Is there anything that you like to do maybe at the start of the year, maybe as a warmer, maybe as a fun thing to do in your lessons?
Yeah, I love giving them sentence stems and useful language. So how to start a question, how to ask about the meaning of a word, how to say that they agree, how to say they need an example, how to say the connection is a bit dodgy, how to say everything, all the things that they're going to need. And I always tell them, keep it handy. Don't leave this in your notebook. Don't leave this in some file. No. I want you to keep that handy with you so that whenever you need something, you can go there. Take all the time in the world. You need 5 minutes to look for the phrase. It doesn't matter. Do so. You have all the time in the world. I love doing that because especially at the beginning, it's difficult to organize all the words and to remember all these new words. So just having something you don't have to think about, it's just, repeating it, reading it, keeping it handy. I feel like that helps a lot, especially at the beginning.
Classroom language is crucial at the start of your learning journey in another language, for sure. Carolina mentions in the chat activities where they have to choose options. And of course, it's easier if you provide some of that language for them instead of working on more open questions, open dialogues, this idea of giving choice, A and B, one or two, potato or tomato, and so on. Something that I feel is useful is to give them the basics to be able to carry a speaking activity together, and teaching day one things like I agree, I don't agree,
exactly.
I like it, I don't like it, even as formulas. You don't have to teach present simple day one, but yes, little formulaic expressions that they can use to communicate in a pair work activity. Things like, yes, that's right, no, that's wrong, for when you're doing pair work and they have to say, okay, this is a car, and the other person has to say, yes, that's true, no, that's wrong. For little guessing games, for little information gap. don't need all this language to have a simple dialogue.
That's true. That is true. And prep time as well. Sometimes students do know the words, but they're like, oh my God, I need some time. What was it? I don't remember. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to ask you this question. This is the question. I can give them a model as well, an example. Check it out. Let's go over it. Is it clear? What do I mean? Do I mean this? Do I mean that? Take 1 minute, prepare your answer. If you need a hand, I'm here. And they can write it down, they can organize their thoughts, they can rehearse it, they can share it with a classmate, they can say it aloud a couple of times until it feels good. And then when we're all ready, like, who would like to share their answer? So that they feel more confident, they know where they're going, they had some time to get ready. And that makes a huge difference for many students.
Absolutely. We always talk about interaction patterns. We always talk about scaffolding. So whether it is this idea of doing closed pair work first, where they have preparation time and rehearsal time together with their partner without the pressure of an audience, and then moving on to open pairs, whether it is a think, pair, share type dynamic, where you can think, write it down, look it up in the dictionary if you need it, use AI to help you if you need to, etc., and then get together with somebody to discuss. Whether it is perhaps I, we, you type scaffolding, where first the teacher speaks, then we speak together and we repeat and we practice the pronunciation for this expression and we work as a choir. And then it's you, and now you have to say something, you have to write something, or you have to do something on your own. And there's so much that we can do with beginners. That should not be the reason why we're not creative.
No, not at all. That is true.
Now, other questions having to do with recommendations. And people mentioned that you, of course, commented on different ways in which you use AI. In this case, for example, ChatGPT, although it could be any AI chatbot. You mentioned Kahoot, I think, as a kind of game you can play with students. Are there any other ways in which you like to use technology, or that any other go-to tools that you like to use?
Yeah, so I use those two. I also use Teachermatic. It's also an AI platform, and it can do different things for you. You can use it to plan a lesson, and then you tweak it if you want to. You can create texts, you can create activities based on YouTube videos. Something that I think is really, really, really important when picking the tools that we're going to be using this year is to try out different ones and then stick with 1, 2, maybe 3. Because something that I notice is that there are so many tools coming out all the time that it is overwhelming for teachers, because we have very little free time and we end up spending it trying out all these new platforms, because they're going to change the way we teach and everything's going to change forever and it's going to transform our teaching. And I feel like finding something that works for you and your student, that's all we need. Yeah.
Absolutely. If I could tell you how many things I have bookmarked over the last year. Oh, this is great for creating this thing. And then I spend a ton of time trying to figure out how the platform works. And then that sits in my bookmarks bar, never to be used until then I want to use it. And now you have to pay for it, or now you're free to expire it, or something like that. But in this vein, somebody on Facebook asked if you can use or if you can suggest AI-based raters for assessing and scoring writing automatically in terms of grammar, spelling, and coherence. Is this something that you would recommend to grade students' writings using an AI tool, or to what extent do you feel that we need human
I was
assessment?
going to tell you, I like reading things myself because there's that human thing. I'm not saying I'm better than an AI. I'm definitely not, but I just like being part of the process. And I feel like students like it when teachers read what they write. So I think that's a very important part of the process. Otherwise, it's like, why bother writing if she's not even going to read it? So I think that's a very important element. I do like the idea of using AI during the writing process and maybe sharing phrases or sentences or paragraphs with an AI and saying, how can I make it better? Explain to me what changes you make to what I wrote, or how, why, right? And we can talk about it. Everyone can share something that ChatGPT improved or changed. And we can say, is that actually a good idea? Because sometimes a student shares something that ChatGPT changed, and we end up going, I mean, it is a nice idea, but I feel like ChatGPT didn't understand where we were going with this activity. Maybe the prompt wasn't the right one. Maybe ChatGPT just didn't get it. So it can be a very nice tool to use during the process, but I don't know if I would just allow it to do that for me. Yeah.
Yes, and in the same way as we complain that students do the whole writing using AI,
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
wouldn't be fair if we did all the grading using AI. But I agree with the
Absolutely.
idea of incorporating AI during your process writing and encouraging learners
Yeah.
to also to know what to ask. So how can I say this
Absolutely.
in a more formal way? How
Yeah.
can I make these two ideas a bit shorter? Things like
Yeah.
that as a writing companion rather than just
Yeah.
write this whole
Absolutely.
thing or grade this whole thing. Um,
Mhm.
so
And
lots
because,
of comments. Yes.
yeah, no, I was going to say that because we're also the ones reading what our students write, we know what lessons we need to plan. So we know they need to work on spelling. We know we need to work on more complex sentences. We need, so that's super important. Maybe there's an AI that can do it and is amazing at doing that. But we get so much information when we read what our students write that it would be a pity not to do it.
Yes, and sometimes also when we import students' work into AI, we also need to be ethical about the
Yeah.
extent to which it is the moral thing to do to
Yeah.
upload students' work into an AI that
Mhm.
will, of course, take this as their own for the future. So careful with AI guidelines as well.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid we don't have a whole lot more time. Pilar, can you remind us again, where can we find you if we want to get more of your ideas?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram. My username is at teachers of English _, and you'll find lots of very practical, very simple teaching ideas.
What did you post about this week?
So, oh, by the way, today I shared some ready-made resources I found on Teaching English. So, if you guys happen to be getting ready for a new school year, for your first lessons, you're going to find some very nice ready-made resources that you can download and use with your students.
Brilliant. And Pilar often posts collaborations with the British Council where she shares
Mhm.
British Council resources and ideas. So we encourage her, you all to give her a follow and stay tuned. So thank you so very much, Pilar. And we need to head to our next session. So for people on Facebook and in the Teaching English community, you will get a survey to record that you attended today's talk. Please complete the form so that you receive your certificate of participation. And if you want to continue watching the different talks in ELT Week Argentina, you can head to the British Council Argentina YouTube channel. That's all for today on our Facebook. For everybody else, we are going to continue with the next session in just 5 minutes. We're going to take a little break. So we will begin our next session at 7:05 in 5 minutes from now. So please don't go anywhere, and we'll see you very shortly. Thank you so much, Pilar.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you guys for joining. See you later. Bye.
and welcome back. Thank you for staying on. For our second session today, it is my pleasure to welcome Maria Alejandra Mareco. Maria Alejandra holds a master's in applied linguistics to teaching English as a foreign language and a master's in bilingual education. With 28 years of experience, she has taught all levels in Argentina and currently teaches in North Carolina in the United States. Her work focuses on CLIL lesson design, inclusive scaffolding, and teacher professional growth. She has led multiple teacher training workshops and created materials that bridge language and content learning. So in this session, now she will present a practical CLIL-inspired framework adapted for English as a foreign language teaching contexts in Argentina, where teachers can plan short integrated lessons that develop language through meaningful content like science, art, or social studies. So a big welcome, Maria Alejandra.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here at ELT Week Argentina. Thank you, Mariela, for your words. And let me start with something very real. How many times have you planned a beautiful English lesson, but the content felt disconnected, or the content was strong, and English became just a decoration? Have you ever thought about that? Okay. Today I'm sharing a simple idea with a big impact, bridging lessons, building minds. And this is not adding more to your work. It's about using English as a bridge, so students learn something meaningful while they learn the language. And this is my presentation today, bridging lessons, building minds, CLIL for Argentinian classrooms. Okay, I will tell you my plan for today. First of all, we will deal with what's bridging lessons and building minds. And this is about connecting lessons so learning makes sense and using language as a tool for thinking, right? Then, what are the advantages of CLIL in action? We will see how CLIL helps students understand content more deeply, participate more, and think critically. And finally, what teachers can take and use from all these.
Hi, everyone. We're experiencing a tiny technical issue, so we'll be back with Maria Alejandra in just a second, if that's okay.
Lessons connect to each other, to content, to real thinking, and language becomes the bridge, not the goal by itself. Building minds means going beyond activities. It means helping students understand, think, question, and make meaning. Okay, so let's see if you have understood. Yes? In CLIL, language is not something students memorize. It's a tool that they use to understand, connect, and think. And that's what today is about, using meaningful content and language to move students from lessons to understanding. So let's go to what is content and language integrated learning, CLIL. What's CLIL? CLIL is not just teaching science or history in English and hoping students understand what you are teaching. If students are lost, silent, or only copying, that's not CLIL. CLIL is also not teaching a list of vocabulary words and calling it content. Knowing words is not the same as understanding ideas, yes? And CLIL is the connection that you establish between language, content, and thinking, okay? So, let's say something important about this, yes? That are the 4 C's. The 4 C's are the main task that we should develop in our classrooms. We have to use these 4 C's: content, communication, cognition, and culture. And CLIL is not just the language alone. It stands for these 4 elements. Let's begin with content. I know that you know what's content. What's content for you? For example, this is the subject itself. It's the real knowledge, the real concept, the real skills. And what is communication? This is the language students need to understand, talk about, and explain when they are going to go to the content itself. Yes, the language they use to communicate. Then we have the cognition. And in CLIL, as students use this cognition to analyze, connect ideas, and make meaning. And finally, we have culture. There is culture is what students learn through their identity, their context, and their connections. Yes. So the key idea is simple. CLIL only works when these 4 elements are intentionally connected, but if one of them is missing, CLIL is incomplete. So remember, content, communication, cognition, culture, all of them interrelated, okay? Let's go to the following one, about the curriculum design in CLIL, yes? In order to develop CLIL lessons, we should think at the very beginning of this, we should choose authentic content, real topics from the curriculum, not simplify or artificial ones. Then we should prioritize what we really want to cover, because we cannot cover everything. So we must identify the key concepts students truly need to understand. Next, we think about progression. We sequence this learning from concrete to abstract. So from what students can see and experience in the classroom to deeper ideas and explanation. And finally, we have to align everything related to the curriculum and the concepts, going from concrete to abstract. We have to make our students feel that they are ready to produce, yes? So they are going to use both cognition and culture. This is the goal of CLIL. Okay, now, something to consider is that CLIL is not vocabulary by itself. It goes beyond that. We plan for three different types of language, let's say. Language of learning, language for learning, and language through learning. The very first step is the language of learning, yes? That is the language students need to understand, yes? in order to apply to the subjects. Then the language for learning is the language that they are going to use in order to explain, compare, and justify. Yes. And finally, we have the language through learning, that is the new language that appears during tasks. That is to say, that is a language that emerge naturally while they're working. Yes. So this is the model, let's say. We first model, then we practice. At the end, we recycle. We recycle the language, for example. Okay. So these 3 steps always goes in this simple sequence. We activate the language, we build the language, and we reflect. Do you know how to activate? Can you tell me if you activate your students and how you activate? You can write there in the chat. For example, when we activate, we spark curiosity and pull prior knowledge with a quick question, image, or prediction. Yes, we recall on what they already know. When students build, students learn the content through a thinking task with a clear language support. We can use word banks, sentence starters, guided talk. We can write on our boards, for example, some word bank, the vocabulary, the structure that we would like to use. And when we have to reflect about what they are learning, we make learning visible with a fast check. For example, by using an exit ticket, one sentence summary, and we help our students tell us what they understand about everything. Okay? So we should follow this: activate, build, and reflect. And you're going to see in the examples I have. And how you activate, you can write there in the chat. For example, when we activate, we spark curiosity and pull prior knowledge with a quick question, image, or prediction. Yes, we recall on what they already know. When students build, students learn the content through a thinking task with a clear language support. We can use word banks, sentence starters, guided talk. We can write on our boards, for example, some word bank, the vocabulary, the structure that we would like to use. And when we have to reflect about what they are learning, we make learning visible with a fast check. For example, by using an exit ticket, one sentence summary, and we help our students tell us what they understand about everything. Okay? So we should follow this: activate, build, and reflect. And you're going to see in the examples I have for you. Okay? And then let me think about this. Cognition and academic thinking. This is something very easy. Sometimes we don't realize, and we are using all the time in our classrooms. Yes? So we should think about different kind of activities that help our students think, like observation. Yes, observation of a video, observation of a chart. Yes, classifying things, comparing things. We can support our students, yes, and helping them think clearly about this by using cognitive scaffolding with visuals, yes. So, for example, my classroom is full of pictures, full of charts, because this helps them think, yes, and they are remembering all the time. They remind about previous knowledge. And then we should adjust and support them, yes? And remember that in CLIL, we should move all the time. And what's that about moving? is that we recycle the learning, not only the structures, not only the vocabulary, also the activities and everything that we do in order to help our students develop their thinking. And let's go to scaffolding. Yes? You know what scaffolding? Can you tell me what do you understand by scaffolding? Okay. When we say scaffolding in CLIL, we are not talking about making tasks easier. We are making learning possible. This is the difference. And we have different kind of scaffolding. One of them is language scaffolding. Okay. Thank you very much, and sorry, but you know, technology is like this. Sometimes things happen, and in this case, I know the server or something else was not working properly. So let's talk about scaffolding. Yes, scaffolding is something that we have been doing all the time. Yes, but in CLIL is really important because we are moving from content, language content, to the content that you are going to use to teach English through, okay? So we have language scaffolding, the cognitive one, visual, and we have to join them. The language scaffolding, you can do this by using sentence frame, word banks, modals, yes? So it's very important to provide the students with a lot of material and examples so they can manage to know, they can learn, they can use the sentence frames or the language that you are trying to make your students learn. And then the cognitive ones, okay? So you have to be clear enough and provide them examples and different tasks and rate it according to the level they have in the language, okay? Then we have to use a lot of charts, diagrams, organizers, and visuals, of course. And it's important to support students gradually, yes? And you can remove these scaffoldings like modals or like sentence frame as they are moving from the abstract, from the concrete stage of the language to the abstract one. Yes? Okay. So what about the task and activities that you have to design in CLIL? This task and activity should be meaningful because, as it says, content language integrated learnings refers to this. You are going to teach English through another subject, yes? So you're going to use previous knowledge or something that they already know, in Spanish in this case, to learn English, yes? So that is why you are not going to teach something that is isolated, yes? And you should include some guided interactions, supported output, comprehensible input, yes? And you have to integrate the 4 skills that we are always talking when we teach English, like listening, speaking, reading, and writing, yes? And all of them are going to be included and linked to the content that you are teaching. And which are these content? Are geography, history, social sciences, let's say for the primary school, or for example, natural sciences, yes, everything that you want to teach or to use as a tool for teach English. And the role of the CLIL teacher is like being a facilitator of learning, yes? You are a language mediator. You can connect, you can help your students connect the language, that is to say, the English language that you want to teach, with the content that perhaps they are learning in natural sciences or in biology or in history. And then you can also be some kind of curriculum designer, yes? That is to say, you have to, when you are going to write your objectives, you have to be clear enough to have your content plus your language. Yes, that is to say, you have to match the content. In history, for example, you want to teach them about the Egyptians, or about any, for example, the 9th of July in Argentina. And so you have to make that this content works with the language you want to teach. For example, maybe you want to teach the simple past. So, okay, I will use all these facts about the history to teach the simple past tense. Yes. Then you also have to explain, justify, and report everything. That is to say, you're going to guide their academic discourse that you are teaching, because the purpose of this is that students can tell you what they have learned about history or social sciences or biology, for example. Yes, to explain everything by using the English language. And then you have to adjust everything according to what you can see. If it is very difficult for my students to express this in English, okay, I have to scaffold first. I have to give them, for example, charts, yes, anchor charts, and vocabulary help, so they can use the language properly. Yes? Okay, so now I will show you everything that I have explained, that perhaps is a lot of theory, let's say, in action. That is to say, into different activities. So this is, for example, the metric that I use with my primary students. Here you have the areas, the topic that I have picked up for this school year, the content, yes, the content of the science or history, the language one, and the cognitive, yes? So, for example, here we have natural sciences, the plant growth. You can even work with the germination. You can provide the students with some seeds. You can give them this experience of seeing how this plant is growing since being a seed to a plant, how it works and how it grows. And then they can draw and explain which are the different parts of the plant. You can use the simple present tense in this case. You can sequence, and you can use first, then, finally. The same here with social studies. That is to say, this is a metric. This is what I do at the very beginning of the year. I go and talk with the different teachers. And so, okay, I don't take all the different subjects, but I take something that's going to be useful for the purpose of teaching my students. Yes, and then I try to match the content of the language with the content they are doing or they are going to do in art, culture, history, yes, the different subjects. For example, here, yes, you have the animal life cycle, yes. So in order to activate, that is very important that you activate your students, you have to provide the students with a lot of visuals and listening, for example, yes. So here you have, for example, the life cycle of a chicken, yes? And so something that I usually do is to activate them with this, but at the same time, I give them an activity, yes? So they are moving. Students learn a lot when they are moving. So, for example, they have to match the picture to the words here, yes? And then what is building? At this stage, students receive mix-up stages and put them in the correct order, but they have to explain, yes? And then even can use translanguaging. What's this about translanguaging? The mix-up of both languages, yes? Because when they are in the primary school, it is very difficult for them to have a lot of vocabulary. But if you have provided, for example, on your board, sentence frames, and then the vocabulary pictures, and then you help them build up the language, you have the results, very good results. Yes? So here, for example, in the building again, they have much, and they can explain, yes, and they can mix up the languages. Then at the end, always, you can give always a reflection time or a reflecting activity. So they can tell you what they have learned, perhaps by drawing, perhaps by telling you, perhaps by writing something, okay? And this is something that they have learned with their teacher. That is to say, in natural sciences, they are studying this. So you take this, you apply all the changes that you need for teaching English, and then your students are going to remember, okay, oh yes, I have learned this with a teacher, and it's going to be easier for them and meaningful at the same time. And so this is, for example, an example of anchor charts. This is something that you can build by yourself or with your students, class by class. So by the end of this unit, they are going to have this on the board or somewhere in the classroom, and they can recall on this every time they are working with vocabulary or the sentence frame. Okay? And this is another example that I made with my students. It was called Seeds for Life. Yes, it is a project in which we have learned about the germination. We studied the different parts of the plant. So for the activation, I gave them some seeds, and they were drawing every day how it was growing. Then in the building stage, they began reading, matching, and ordering, yes, all the different pictures and writing by using connectors, by using first, then, next, by using the vocabulary. And then the reflective or reflection stage, where they discuss everything. By the end of this project, my students, we had this, a very big one, and the whole community was engaged on this. So we planted some trees in the garden of our school, and this was really meaningful for them. So here we applied the language of, language for, and language through, yes? So in language of learning, they learned the vocabulary. The language for learning, they began speaking, talking, telling the process. And the language through learning, yes, they could use the structures, yes, in a correct way. But in this, as I told you before, the teacher should help them, yes, provide them examples, give them a structure, give them vocabulary, yes. So this was a project, and the whole community was engaged in this. It was really meaningful for the students. And in all this process, for example, I create my own text. So we went let's say, we did the reading comprehension, they read, then with this, the reading comprehension, we have language in action. So we move from BICS to CLIL. That is to say, from the basic language to the academic language. We realized by the end of the unit that they have moved from saying just simple words or vocabulary to content through language and the academic one. Yes? So it's a process. It's not something that you are going to do in only one class. You need perhaps, I don't know, a month, okay? This is another example where I work about the different senses, yes? So this was also, we were with the teacher, so the teacher was teaching them about the different senses. I got this lesson, and I made the different changes. I created the PowerPoints for the students, and then you have a lot of materials that there are in different platforms. So you can take these songs, listenings, and help students understand, okay? So here you have, for example, different activities that I gave them. There was a game in which I folded their eyes, and the kids had to tell me what they were trying. I took some bananas, garlic, apple, lemon into the classroom, so they tried. And we saw, I mean, the students saw that when they have their eyes folded, it was very difficult for them to know what they were testing. But when they were unfolded eyes, okay, it was very easy for them to see where they were eating. Okay, and this is for secondary school, for example. In secondary school, it is much easier, let's say. And you can also apply this for kindergarten, yes? I mean, you can apply this for all the different levels, but you have to organize what you are going to teach. So this is the metric for secondary school. Here you are going to have social studies or history, the different civilizations, and I want to show you something, okay? In this, we were working here, division of powers in government, social studies, civics. So I decided, okay, what I'm going to teach about this. So my first step was to give them the vocabulary, then the language frame that they were going to use. And then from this vocabulary and language frame, they moved to the academic language. Yes, and in order to develop this lesson, I use a book creator that is an app that exists here. Yes, you can create your own book here. I created this. We were studying about the United States government. So I wrote the text. I highlighted the words that I needed them to learn, yes, and the words that they were obliged to use when explaining, let's say obliged, but this was the vocabulary that was meaningful for them. Then I gave them activities, but I always provide them with the vocabulary they need. And the vocabulary is not the translation of the word, is a picture and words. So students were really engaged because after that, they had to create their own book by using Book Creator. Okay, another one was about natural sciences, the light spectrum. Yes, we were with this, with a glass of water, and the students were really engaged because they were studying this with in biology. Yes. So again, after an experiment, we did an experiment. They wrote down what they could see. And then after that, we went through reading comprehension. I always prepare the whole material for the students. Yes. And here you have the grammar, yes, that we have used. Okay. The verb to be, the simple present. Okay. So we made the reflection stage with the kids. The activity were experiments. They experimented, they wrote some charts and sentences about everything that they saw. Another one was about social studies here, yes, where we compare past and present, both tenses, yes. So we began talking about different civilizations that existed many years ago and how they are living now. Yes. And so we have pre-activities, that is to say, when I introduce this to them, and then also the vocabulary building, the sentence frame. We created mind maps, yes. And we connected this with art. So I work with the teacher, yes. In this case, the history teacher with the art teacher and the language teacher, yes. So we integrated everything, and it was really meaningful because kids remember what they learned. Yes, and for example, here, something that is very usual because we deal with this, because it's part of our history, yes. So again, I adapted a kind of part of the history of the Andes crossing, yes. So they have the activation stage, yes, where we mark in a map where these things happen, the different events. Then we have the different input, yes. And then I help the students with a guided output. Yes, okay. How? By using sentence frame, as I said before. So in this way, I support the learning in 4 different stages or steps: the pre-task, the visual one, the guided, and then the scaffolding. That is why you have there, yes? We move from something that was very easy to something that was more complex, yes? And for example, in this step-by-step timeline, we created something like this. I mean, the students, they could draw, for example, or they cut out some images. So they explain the planning, how they began doing everything in order to do this cross. Then in this last picture, you can see the flag that is not the Argentinian one, to remind the students who we were fighting against, let's say, okay? Okay, so this is the end of my presentation. And remember that CLIL is this: is content, is language, is integrating, yes. And so content, cognition, communication, and culture work, all of them together. We as teacher help a student by scaffolding, and then we can use a lot of anchor charts to help our students. Okay, have you ever used CLIL? Could you implement or use something of this? What do you think? Would your students enjoy CLIL lessons? Would you like to tell me? Okay, if you have any questions, you can ask me. Yes, Angelica? Yes, the students enjoy it very much. Yes.
Thank you, Maria Alejandra. We actually have tons of questions and comments in the chat, and everybody finding the topic so interesting. Many of the teachers in the chat mentioned the engagement motivation factor, and how when you present your lessons through CLIL, it's really meaningful. One of the teachers from Córdoba mentioned that this year, in some secondary schools, they are going to start with this idea of cátedras compartidas, which is a shared period between the English teacher and the teacher of another subject, like 40 minutes a week, that is English plus geography, or English plus history, English plus music. So this is a great starting point to get some ideas of what to do with those shared spaces. Sometimes it happens to us that the English teacher that has 1 hour here, 1 hour there, never gets a chance to meet the teachers of other subjects to plan together or to discuss what's coming up in their syllabus. So this is great.
Yes, sometimes it's difficult for us because we don't have a lot of time to do this. But at the very beginning of the year, it's important if we can share ideas with the other teachers. So you can take some ideas from the art teacher, even from PE, from science, social studies, math, yes, and from language too. Sometimes I use what, for example, a poem that they are going to read in second grade or second year. So, okay, I can translate the poem or I can find the translation of this. Sometimes nowadays there's a lot of possibilities to have in English, in Spanish. So you can compare and children know the vocabulary in Spanish in this case. So you can help them realize, okay, this is in English, in this way we say in Spanish. Yes?
Absolutely. And we have so many examples in the chat. Silvina mentions in Junin, for example, they share the English classroom with the science teacher and work on things together. And many teachers agreeing that it takes time to plan, but that it's worth it in the end. Some of the other topics that came up in the chat with ideas were one from Agustina, who's going to be with us on Thursday. And she mentions the need to apply this approach nowadays where we have, for example, comprehensive sexuality education in schools, environmental education, digital education, and how all of these can be tackled in the English lesson through this useful framework. Carolina in the chat mentions the idea of healthy habits, mental health, bullying, and cyberbullying as topics to work with through CLIL, and so many other cases and suggestions in the chat. I liked the examples that you presented because I feel that there is a bit of a myth for us that you can only do CLIL if you have 20 hours of English a week, if you work in a bilingual school with advanced learners preparing, I don't know, IB exams. But the examples that you presented were things like, for example, learning about the colors with the color spectrum, or learning simple past through ancient civilizations. And so things that are manageable language-wise. You can say that this civilization ate this, lived in this country, wore these clothes, and it doesn't have to be something exclusively for very high-level students.
That's right. Even with kindergarten, of course, you have to adjust to their vocabulary and what they are learning. For example, at the very beginning of kindergarten, it's going to be somehow difficult. You teach the vowels, yes, but you can teach them the vocabulary. For example, the classroom vocabulary, yes. And what's important here is that when they are in the pre-K or K, kindergarten, they do not realize that they are two different languages. For them, it's only one language and things can be said in two different ways. This is according to neurolinguistics. So we can do it. Yes, we can work with the teachers when they are teaching numbers in kindergarten. So you can go. So uno, one, and then you can count things, yes, in order to avoid translation, let's say.
Absolutely. Yes. One interesting comment, speaking about some challenges, Rita mentions in the chat that she was working with healthy habits with her students, and she tried to use surveys to work with simple present. And I imagine this is like, how often do you eat this, or how often do you do that? But the students didn't know what a survey is. That she found this very sad. Do you find sometimes when implementing CLIL that you are taking for granted that the learners will have known something from their other subjects and you end up having to teach that?
Yes, sometimes, sometimes they learn first in English and then they say this in Spanish. So when they go to the Spanish class, they say, oh, I have already learned this in English. So let's say both subjects are going to be really rich or enriching each other, because you can learn from English and you can learn from Spanish, and then you can mix them. And students are really, okay, I know this. They feel really well after a lesson in CLIL. At the very beginning, sometimes it's somehow difficult because they don't want to speak English. They feel ashamed. They are, okay, I don't know. But then if you help them by using anchor charts or sentence frame or vocabulary, so they engage and begin speaking English.
Absolutely, and it's actual content that you're teaching, rather than the cat.
Yes, and this is clear. Teaching English through content. Yes, so they can see that something they know in Spanish, they can apply in English, and that English is not only structures, grammar structures, simple present, verb to be, or have got, or whatever. It's something that they can use every day.
Absolutely, because when they are in primary and secondary school, is a big part of their life. And they are probably it's going to be more meaningful for them to have to explain the main revolution than to have to give directions using a map, perhaps. So
yes,
it's important to bear in mind.
Yes, I try to make them, let's say, I use a lot of games. Once they have the sentence frames and they have the vocabulary, okay, let's play with this. And it's always like, okay, I build up different teams, and okay, the first one to do this is going to have 5 minutes recess, for example, today, or it's going to do something different from the other groups. So all of them are trying to say something, and they, okay, don't speak Spanish, tell this in English, or okay. So yes, it's very meaningful.
Absolutely. Well, I have to thank you so very much. I'm afraid we don't have a ton more time for questions. I encourage everybody to read each other's comments in the chat, because there are really nice ideas and suggestions from our teachers and teacher educators in the audience. But we'll have to wrap it up. So thank you so much, Maria Alejandra. Sorry, everybody, about all the technical hiccups that we had tonight. And I'm going to finish today by inviting everybody to come back tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a fantastic day 2 planned for you, with Maria Eugenia Yaniro and Mariana Hidalgo talking about a 4-element toolkit to upgrade teaching in diverse classrooms. We are also going to be joined by Gonzalo Diaz, who's going to be talking about unveiling your teaching philosophy. And finally, Diana Bauduco, who's going to tell us about last-minute learning through exit tickets. So I hope to see everybody today and everybody tomorrow as well. Thank you, especially for having joined us on a public holiday. I know many people are celebrating Carnival, so we appreciate that you're here. And if you are not, you will be able to watch the recording of this session that's going to remain in our YouTube channel till the end of times. So hope to see everybody again tomorrow. Thank you again, Maria Alejandra.
Thank you.